September 16th, 1814. Francis Scott Key completes the Star-Spangled Banner just in time for open mic night at Fort McHenry. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And our guest is a fabulous Denver comedian, host of Rebel Yell every month. Please welcome the wonderful Allison Rose.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Allison.
Thanks for having me.
Zach, how are you?
Pretty same. living in the city, the third, formerly second, currently third city, as per usual. It got demoted in the 1800s or 1900s. I don't know when, but it got demoted at some point.
Do you guys really keep track of that over there?
Yeah, there's a big board on the Sears Tower with the number on it, and it very seldom changes. We're really counting on global warming to even the odds, though.
Yeah, of course. Oh, no. Once global warming hits, you guys are in Hot Dog City.
Yep.
Oh, no.
I'll make all of our signs relevant again. We have a theater here. The second city, it doesn't even make sense. But once that ocean kicks up, we're back in the money. We might even become the first city at that point.
The only city.
Yeah.
What's left of civilization.
Yeah.
That's actually the new Chicago motto.
Mm-hmm. I think
When
Denver
you're
will be
here,
around
you're
too. It's even
alive.
higher up.
Which is like...
Denver will last longer, in
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, no, we'll dry out. Okay. What do we do on this fucking show?
If you're new to this podcast, it's a show where we rank different cities based on their likelihood to be destroyed by global warming.
Today's episode, Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, already not worth living in, so we're just going to table that one. Sorry if you live in Omaha. Anyways.
I just pictured just someone wearing like Cornhusker red, just drooping sadly, like a wilting flower.
A Cornhuskers hat and a revisionist t-shirt, and they're like, one of these things has let me down today.
Aww.
Available on patreon.com/therevisionists. Anyway.
In fact, instead of a doom and gloom Al Gore inspired podcast, we are a podcast where we look at an event from history. One of the people on the show tells the actual true story of that event. That's the part where you do the learning. And then somebody else tells a bonkers, crazy, batshit alternate version. And that's the part where the show does the turning. And
okay, I can't tell if your mic isn't working or if you just are having a very hard time right now.
And at the end, the third person votes on which becomes the true history going forward. So one true story, one fake, and only one exits the arena alive. Last time, we talked about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which you millennials who are older millennials may know as the inspiration for that band that had that one hit song. But
older millennials may know that.
Yeah, older millennials, post-college
No
millennials.
one else cares.
No one else cares. It was our time.
Not like these young millennials who are ruining everything.
Yeah. But ultimately, because the actual story of that is so absolutely insane, I recommend you listen to that episode if you have it, because it's a great story from history. The real story won out at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at. And this time, what are we discussing, Brian?
This time we are discussing one of my favorite people from World War I, Charlotte Despard. I'll be doing the true history. Allison will be doing the alternate. So if we're all ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
You're ready to go.
Tear into this. And I will say, typically I don't, steal so directly from a source. But I feel like I should specifically cite a website called Spartacus Learning for a lot of the basis for this, as well as Adam Hochschild's wonderful book, To End All Wars, which I love a lot and you should read.
We get it, Brian. You're above Wikipedia like everybody else on this show.
Any hoozle. Charlotte French was born in 1844. She had a younger brother named John, who she was very close with, and a younger sister who I think was called Sarah, who doesn't really factor into the story all that much, except when she dies. But
Well, spoiler, I guess.
yeah, I mean it's World War I. Everyone's dead. Anyway, speaking of dead, her dad dies when she's 10.
Speaking of dead.
Segues. Her dad, who was...
Speaking of dead, most of the people who have ever lived work for this transition.
Speaking
And
of
hey,
dead,
let's just
it
toss
looms
in-
overall.
Everyone who's alive, because eventually they'll be dead too. The universal condition. It's a transition to anything.
If you take nothing else from this story, please take that.
That's why they call death the ultimate segue.
Perfect. So her dad dies when she's 10, and her mother was committed to an insane asylum. And so she was sent to London to live with relatives. She had a traditional education there. Later, she...
You know, I have to say, I feel like... I know we've talked about millennials already on this podcast,
Yes,
but I have to
like
assume
3
that
minutes ago.
they must be killing true romance, because it seems like nowadays nobody ever goes to an insane asylum when their husband
against
or
their
wife
will?
dies.
Yeah.
Back in the
you're right.
day, your spouse died, you went to that's what was done. You went to an insane asylum. Nowadays, people just deal with it because love is dead.
Yeah, they just throw avocados on the grave and
Yeah. Instead of buying a grave, they spend it all on avocado toast and throw the body in the gutters.
just in the Buffalo Wild Wings that they're running out of business.
They make it. They use it for urban composting.
You know, that bad thing, urban composting.
Yeah,
What's it called? Urban gardens? I don't know what they're.
I just like that premise, the good old days of insane asylums.
Remember when your spouse was so much of your identity that you lost your mind when they died? So later in talking about her education, she recalled one point when she said, quote, I asked my governess why God had made slaves, and I was promptly sent to bed. After that, lest I infect my sisters with my spirit of insubordination, I was kept in solitary confinement for 3 or 4 days, and then sent away to school. So this would kind of become a trend with her.
Wow. It's like if instead of Frozen being about a girl who develops ice powers, it's about a girl who gets woke.
I still haven't seen Frozen, full disclosure. So Charlotte married Maximilian Despard, who is an English and Irish man who had made a fortune in pillaging Asia. And she took to writing. Her first novel was a romance novel called Chaste as Ice, Pure as Snow, which came out in 1874, which I'm sure at the time was had a lot of fucking.
Probably too risque, too chaste.
Exactly.
I mean, I have to assume that Snow and Ice are both chaste and pure because no one wants to fuck Snow. It's very logistically difficult.
Somebody probably.
In
wants
terms of circulation, if your toes go to frostbite quickly, I have to assume something that only has blood in it some of the time.
Okay,
Well,
well,
okay, Mr. Vanilla.
all right. Also, a lady could fuck the snow. Why is it just?
That's true.
Come on.
I mean, I don't know how
We're
pleasant.
not
I
as-
can't. I have not walked in your shoes. I won't talk to the woman's experience, so I don't know if that's an alluring idea or not.
Right. I'm not saying that it's alluring. Just saying
You know
we
when
can do more than you.
You know when
You're right.
Frosty the
It's
Snowman puts his
2017.
hat on, you know that it's time to get And
It's 2017. Women can fuck snow.
Yeah, come on.
if there is any snow left to fuck.
But not if Donald Trump gets his way.
Okay. Annie Hoozle. She wrote 10 novels over 16 years. Most of them were romance. But she did write a book called A Voice from the Dim Millions, which was about a poor young factory worker, but no one was willing to publish it. And her husband died, there it is again, in 1890.
End of story.
Then
She was committed to an insane.
Yeah.
The rest takes place in her head.
Yeah.
It turns out, yeah, it's like a Toy Story.
Yeah, the rest is fucking
twist,
sucker
fan
punch,
theory,
basically.
Yeah. She has a Batman delusion.
I mean, she is kind of like social justice Batman to me a little bit.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Oh,
after
that should replace social justice warrior, by the way, because I think
yeah,
like people have gotten like tired of social justice warrior, but it's harder to make fun of social justice Batman.
Yeah. I think that's just Batman, though.
No. Regular Batman beats up on the mentally ill and the poor.
All right, okay. All right, okay. I take back everything I've ever said.
Well, no. Have you read my pamphlet about the mentally ill and the poor? It's called Frank Miller. So after her husband died, she decided to dedicate her life to the poor, and she left her estate and moved to Battersea in London, where a bunch of poor people lived. And while she was there, she opened a soup kitchen, a health clinic, and working youth and men's clubs. She also converted to Catholicism, which the poor Irish people were really into. And she also joined the Social Democrats and the Labour Party at this point. And 4 years after that, she was elected to the post of Poor Law Guardian.
Which is not a great name for a position. It just sounds like you're bad at being a law guardian.
Yeah, no, they didn't really. There was something called the Poor Law, which basically was the British way of transferring like services from the poor from like churches to the state. And so poor law guardians were meant to be the guardians of the poor. She was a member of the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies, or NUWSS. NUWSS. But by like 1906, she was disappointed by the lack of progress, and she joined the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU, which was led by the women of the Pankhurst family, who we will definitely discuss because their story is like sad and tragic for World War I. So I, of course, want to talk about it.
And we're still pre-war, right? Well, pre-war.
Yes, this is still the prelude to the war.
Okay.
And one of the bones of contention between Despard and the Pankhursts is that the WSPU wanted the vote for women, but only if they met the same qualifications as men, which was owning. You had to like own enough property.
I thought you were going to say having a penis. Kind of a catch-22, they thought of.
Oh, God damn it. Despard believed in universal suffrage across gender, ethnic, and economic groups. She was arrested at a protest in 1906 when she was 62 because she charged at the police when they were pulling another WSPU member who was trying to address the crowd from a statue. She went to prison twice in 1907. But the rift with the Pankhurst grew and grew. So Despard and 75 other members of the WSPU.
Man, they really need to work on their acronyms. Acronyms were not very much fun back in those days.
You can't really make any sort of like word out of it. Just WSPU.
WSPU.
Later there's Wiffle, which I guess is actually like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
That
one sounds fun. Like, I think if someone came up to you on the street and was like, want to join Wiffle? You'd be like, yes. And then later you'd find out it was an acronym and be disappointed.
I mean, I like the way you said yes because it was still a question. The way you said it, they're just like enthusiastic, but like yes, maybe. I don't know. I also did like I'm a bad little boy face when I said that for some reason.
You put your finger up to your...
Yeah.
He did. He really did.
You know bad little boys.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a reputation I want to have. Zach Powers on my tombstone. How about we just write Zach Powers? He knew bad little boys.
If there's any way I outlive you, that is definitely happening. But
I'm just going to remove you in my will from the position of person who gets to write my tombstone later on tonight.
So they broke from WSPU to form WIFL, the Women's Freedom League. And they were, like the WSPU, also militant and willing to engage in civil disobedience, but they tended towards nonviolence. Whereas the WSPU led, to like help get women to vote, led an arson campaign, a campaign of bombings, riots, and also just straight vandalism, too, on like their off days.
I like how you built up to vandalism.
Yeah, I realized that as I was reading that. Despard said at one point, quote, "A woman needs economic independence to live as an equal with her husband. It is indeed deplorable that the work of the wife and mother is not rewarded. I hope that the time will come when it is illegal for this strenuous form of industry to be unremunerated," which is something that still hasn't happened. Anyway, Despard also spent a lot of time in Ireland and formed the Irish Women's Franchise League, or IWIFL, in 1908, which is the Apple version of Wiffle. She urged Irish resistors to not pay taxes and avoid the census, and she financially supported Irish workers during labor disputes, and also established the Irish Workers' College. 1914, at age 70, at the outbreak of World War I, the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies announced it was suspending all politics until the war was over. And the Pankhursts and the WSPU made a deal with the government where all the suffragettes would be released from prison and they would get paid. And in return, they would stop protesting for the vote and use their organization to support the war. And Despard and Wiffle refused to support the war, despite popular pressure, overwhelming intimidation. What was worse for Despard is that her brother, John French, who she said was, quote, "more dear to me than anyone else," was the commander-in-chief of the British Army on the Western Front. Even despite that, on the eve of war, she led a public peace rally calling the war a criminal act. So in her diaries, she writes of updates from the war, saying at one point, quote, "It is with keen admiration, but a constriction of heart, that I read of my Jack's splendid dispatch of the retreat in Luce." So, which is basically an antiquated way of saying he ran away real good. And so, at first, she's more unsure about how best to speak against the war, but she learns as she goes on. In 1917, Despard formed the Women's Peace Crusade when she's 73 years old. She traveled across the country visiting conscientious objectors in jail, or as the English spell it, Goal.
What?
Gaol, because... Joel. Yeah, she actually traveled the country visiting Joel, which is a buddy of hers. Her least controversial project was an alcohol-free pub for soldiers, which was surprisingly popular.
Whoa. I have to ask a question. So this alcohol-free pub, did they know what they were getting into, or is it like the episode of every sitcom where the underage kid tries to buy booze, but he buys like the alcohol-free keg,
and they have to
and
pretend
everybody
they're drunk?
acts like they're drunk?
I wish it was like that. It was a well-known like teetotaler bar. It was called the Soldier's Arms, and her brother stopped in from time to time, and like during the tumult of the war, 1918, the UK government very quietly granted women owning property the right to vote and hold office. And Despard became the Labour Party candidate in Battersea, but the war fervor was so high that her stance against it cost her the election. Like, at one point, a friend said about her, quote, "I've only got to send a telegram to Mrs. Despard to say, tomorrow noon I'm going to attack Battersea Town Hall, and she'd be there. She won't ask me why." Like, halfway through, I wanted to start reading that in a British accent, but not going to.
I do
that.
like the idea of them literally quietly granting them the right to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the prime minister comes up to the microphone and he's like, "Women can vote."
Don't tell them, though. Don't let them know.
Maybe
It's
we're
technically legal, but if they show up, just don't say anything.
just real quick, like, looks over their shoulder. Okay, good. None
Also,
of them are
the
here
British-
yet.
The British government is investigating ASMR technology.
Wait, what?
I said the British government is investigating ASMR technology, but you might not have heard it because I whispered it.
Wait, what the fuck is that?
It's like where people really
People find it's like audio therapy via whispering and soft sounds.
Yeah. Or like-
okay.
yeah.
Well, I can already say I've been listening to you whisper to me for a few minutes, and I already feel pretty calm.
And you have it recorded, so you could go to sleep to me whispering to you.
I usually
every
do.
night.
What? Anyway, in 1920, age 76, she toured Ireland and collected information on police atrocities against the Irish. She helped form the Women Prisoners Defense League, WPUDL, to support Irish dissidents. Fuck you, vowels. She also joined Sinn Féin, which is the political arm of the Irish Republican Army. But after his removal from command on the Western Front, her brother, John French, was made Viceroy of Ireland. So he was in charge of maintaining English control. And it was finally, after years of clashing, this conflict that tore apart the close relationship between brother and sister. Despard wrote, like, constantly to him, but he wouldn't reply. She bought a mansion in Dublin that the IRA basically used as a stash house. Not like The Wire stash house, but like for weapons, and they would like kind of stay there. It wasn't like it wasn't heroin.
I love that this huge sibling drama is going on, but I also like to imagine during it, like, while these two are clashing it out, Sarah's just in the background like, yeah, I'm selling some art on Etsy now.
Oh, Sarah. I forgot. Sarah died.
Her Etsy dreams never realized.
No, her last words were, "Find me on Etsy." No, she totes died. She was actually a nurse on, I forget on which front when she died, but she served in like France and Belgium, and she served in, I believe she died in the Ottoman Empire, actually, serving as a nurse during the war effort.
Did she not have multiple sisters?
I think I only remember one, and that one not well, so definitely possible.
Okay.
So she bought that mansion in Dublin, IRA used as a stash house, and the police, who were under her brother's command, would raid it fairly frequently for soldiers and guns, but the police were instructed to never touch or bother Despard. She died in 1939, aged 95, after a very long and admirable life. Oh, she was also an anti-vivisection activist. She was a vegetarian, too. And there's this one weird incident that happened called the Brown Dog Affair, which sounds like a romance novel, but it's not, where like medical students would dissect living animals, basically. They would euthanize them and dissect them.
Right.
So that happened, and Despard and the organization she was with, the Anti-Vivisection Society, go Avs, they erected a statue of a brown dog outside Oxford College. And the medical students were like, they rioted to tear down the statue of the dog.
I'm going to be honest with you. For just a minute, I thought because there was a bump in the audio, and I thought instead of vivisection, you were talking about vasectomies. And I was like, what a weird hill to die on.
Hey, ho ho. Should have thought this chant through. Shit, I couldn't think of a chant for vasectomies.
Yeah, just do that hoop
What do we
thing
want?
from Arrested Development.
Sperm, I guess. When do we want it? At the appropriate time.
She'd call it the hoop, like Arrested Development, but she'd put W on the front, probably.
Yeah.
Just
And
W
cut
in
out the
fucking everything.
cut
Yeah,
out
it's
the
called
O's.
whoomp, and then parentheses, there it is.
Yeah.
But that's the real story of Charlotte Despard.
Every week, Denver's own Real Nerds podcast sees a new movie and we podcast our experience to the world.
I think sometimes we're funny.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm talking, not when you're talking, not when you're talking.
Oh,
You know, it might help if you told them that we're on iTunes or we're on Stitcher so they could find a place there you can actually listen to us.
Oh, okay, Brad. We're also on Twitter at Real Nerds, and we have an Instagram account. Boom. Commercial, Brad. Cut, paste, upload. We like to have fun.
Sure. I like fun.
James, you're very bad at improv. RealNerdsPodcast.com.
Allison?
Oh, geez. Okay. I heard a lot of different stuff. So I feel a little embarrassed. Charlotte Despard was born in Kent, Ohio in 1920. Her father was Joseph Rogers.
Oh, she was born after World War I.
Yeah, she was. She was. Okay. They got her wrong. I don't know what Brian's been reading, but not books, apparently.
No, it's mostly Bazooka Joes and popsicle sticks.
Okay. Gum wrappers. Her father was Joseph Rogers. Her mother was the collective women's suffrage movement reaching its climax.
So it's like a sister wives situation, or like
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It seems oddly regressive.
Yeah, she was one of 6 siblings. All of them were born on the day women got the vote. Growing up, they called themselves the Glorious Bastards because they had really glorious hair, except for the one brother, Steve Rogers, whose hair left a lot to be desired. And of course,
they
they were
spell it-
bastards.
Did they spell
What?
it the right way? Did they spell bastards the right way, or did they spell it like the Quentin Tarantino?
They spelled it the right way because they're smarter than that.
Right. Fair enough.
Where the
Right.
Quentin Tarantino
There-
way involves a lot of feet, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the movie title is misspelled. I
No,
think
yeah.
you'll
Yeah.
find if you look on IMDb goofs and gaffes section.
I know.
Anyway, he's a spelling visionary.
Oh yeah, and they were, actual bastards because they didn't have an actual mother, just the suffrage movement. Okay. All right. When the war started, you know which one, the second one.
You know the one we're talking
You know
about.
the one. You know the one. Her brother Steve tried to enlist, but was refused because of his weak ass hair. After trying to enlist, Steve disappeared, saying he was going to find a way to fight the war with stronger follicles than ever. And then Charlotte and her sisters, knowing Roger's weak hair was going to get him killed, traveled overseas to fight in secret.
Like when you say weak hair, like kind of like floppy, or is it just
Extra wispy.
extra wispy?
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to get at KFC. Sorry,
Extra.
God damn it.
Extra wispy. Charlotte became known as the hair Jew. Because she could whip a Nazi to death with her hair, obviously. Duh.
Okay, it's like a Bayonetta thing, kind of.
Obs.
Yeah, seriously. She led her sisters in the charge against the Nazis until one day they trapped Hitler and burned him in the movie theater. I don't know where they got that idea. And afterward, Charlotte swore off violence because the smell of burning hair haunted her dreams. I did not realize how many times I wrote the word hair down when writing this. It really was.
This is actually the first draft of the musical Hair.
Yeah, I did not mean for it to be such an overarching theme.
Well, that's how themes emerge in literature.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, literature.
It's
Okay.
leitmotif.
Her sisters separated from her after the war and made a salon where they satisfied their new bloodlust by killing their clients and baking them into pies.
Okay,
Again,
that took a turn.
no idea where they
Taking a
got that
very,
idea.
Early 19th century turn.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know. Charlotte spent some time after the war trying to find her brother Steve, only to learn his plane had been lost in the North Atlantic. She dedicated her first book, Chaste as Ice, Pure as Snow, to him because she was sure he was still a virgin and he died somewhere cold.
I just picture the dedication being like,
Yeah.
my brother Steve.
The virgin. Yeah.
And
Weak-ass
Rose.
hair.
Yep. It was his nickname, Steve Virgin Rogers.
Steve Virgin Rogers. That was him.
You know, the one who doesn't fuck.
Yeah.
Guys,
Definitely.
I'm right here. Guys.
Back in the United States, Charlotte fell in love with a younger man named Elvis. They were, I really went off on she had a weird life. They were secretly married.
I was about to go Presley, but anyway.
They were secretly married, and she stayed by his side until 1977, when he mysteriously disappeared. And then Charlotte later found a note from him saying that he was going to go to her sister's salon and get a haircut because his darn bangs were in his eyes all the time. And, why hadn't she told him that his sisters owned a barbershop? He clearly needed a haircut.
Yeah, that's just... I mean, does she know about the meat pie thing at this point?
She
or is
does,
it-
yeah.
Okay.
She's separated ways. So Charlotte, who hadn't seen her sisters since the 50s, tried to confront them, but she was too struck by their terrible singing and the tragedy of their apparent hair loss in old age that she just couldn't get revenge on him, She just let him be. But her sisters, certain that she was still looking for revenge, started hunting her, and she had to go into hiding. So she just went back to writing her books, but she couldn't get music out of her mind after Elvis, and as soon as hair bands started up in the 80s, she knew she'd found her next love. So she went undercover as Gene Simmons.
Undercover.
Yep. She's Gene Simmons now.
Gin Simmons.
Yeah.
Which sounds like the worst cocktail.
And then her brother, Steve, this is a weird aside, he's not important, but her brother Steve awoke from the ice. And so she's both Gene Simmons and the head advisor to the Avengers.
Hell yeah.
And she's still alive today and attributes her youthful long life to her magical hair and also possibly the blood of all those Nazis she drank back in the day. So a little more violent.
I think you might have left out the part where she literally drank their blood like a human vampire.
Well,
Oh yeah, you missed that part. Where she became Nosferatu.
yeah. Also,
Peter.
Gene Simmons, Nosferatu.
She contains multitudes. Allison, thank you.
Sure.
Before we move on to judgment, we're going to take care of some business. We are part of the Denver Podcast Network, and there's an event coming up for that on October 8th at Mutiny. There's going to be just a sort of like kickoff party, launch party, which is going to be fun. I will be there, Zach, of course, being in Chicago, and this probably also being the first he's heard about this.
That's a fair assessment, yes.
Will not, but there'll be a bunch of the shows on the network, meeting people and like small panel discussions, so that'll be really fun. Come on down to see that. Speaking of that network, one of the shows is Left Hand Right Brain. It's a podcast where JD Lopez, who is a comedian and future guest and also a very sensitive artist, has a conversation with other artists. I didn't mean to burp in the middle of that.
He's a sensitive boy.
Live ad copy. He's a sensitive boy. I'm a
At
total
Visionist,
dick.
when we do an ad, we make sure to get drunk and start burping in the middle before every ad. That's the Revisionist guarantee.
I am stone sober, sir.
Except for those 4 or 5 Gin Simmons you had before.
Yeah. They have a free-flowing conversation with other artists, breaking down their processes and exploring their personal lives and foibles, but it's also not as pretentious as I just made it sound. It's more like kickback, cracking wise, talking smack, having a good old time. Just one boy and a guest having a good time.
One boy and a guest having
is
a good time.
One bad little boy.
That was
This
the,
is
I think
the
one boy and a
last
guest
live
having a
ad
good
read.
time was the summary for Chased as Ice, Pure as Snow.
Left Hand Right Brain is a better podcast than I just made it sound like. As for us, listeners, we always ask you to write and review the podcast on iTunes, which is mad helpful. And also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And you can always contact us, see news updates, or ask us a question via revisionistpodcast.com. So, Allison,
Yeah.
I mentioned up top you host Rebel Yell first Monday of every month. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Sure. It's just it's kind of like a service industry comedy show night. There's they run wings at that restaurant just during like once a month during comedy, and the next one's October 2nd. We've got Nancy Norton on. Should be a fun show.
Nice. And it's at a Rebel restaurant.
Rebel,
which is,
yeah.
Also just fucking delicious.
Yeah, they're really great food. Really good people that work there. It's a good spot. Go check it out.
Zach, did you want to plug anything?
I was somewhat recently on the Alcohollywood podcast on the Rounders episode. So if you want to go back and look for that, go ahead and take a listen to a podcast that is much more successful than our own and has a real recording studio.
As for me, the next Nighttime Tonight is September 21st, 9 p.m. at Deer Pile, third Thursday of every month. We will be raising money this time around for the Homeless Coalition in Houston. So if you live in Denver and would like to donate to that, that's a really good opportunity to do so. And then I'll be appearing at a new show, Best Bit Forward, September 23rd at Syntax Physic Opera.
Oh yeah, I'm on that too.
Oh, hell yeah. Yay. And I'll also be on the Nerd Roast at the Comedy Room this month, where we'll be roasting George W. Bush, and I will be playing Jeb Bush, which is one of the parts I was born to play. But, Zach, I think now is the time for judgment.
So I'm slightly torn because, as you know, first, she had an extraordinary life full of great accomplishments. She did a lot of things for the progress of women's rights and the peace movement, and it's all extremely inspirational. And I always appreciate it when we have a chance to shine a light on the contributions of non-white men on this show, because white men take up a disproportionate amount of our history books. But on the other hand, Allison took after my own way of forming an alternate history, which is find 4 or 5 pop culture things and just throw them in a stew and see what comes out. And
boy, yum, is that...
Nazi blood stew.
So I am torn, but I'm going to do one thing, but out of pragmatism, because I assume we're going to have an entire section on World War II at some point, and possibly an episode on Elvis, and we might be popular enough that people will tweet at us. He's a historical figure. There was a drunk history about Elvis.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, yeah, I get that now.
And I don't want people to add us 2 years from now being like, you forgot that Hitler was killed in a theater fire by a distaff Inglorious Bastards crew.
Glorious bastard.
The Glorious Bastards, correct, who use their hair as weapons. To preempt those at mentions, I'm going to go with the real history, although the audience could overturn me easily, and I wouldn't be angry if they did.
Yeah, listeners, audience vote is now open, and if you're interested in voting, you can buy your right to vote. Don't listen to the Charlotte Despard story. No.
Yes.
Anyway,
As I say every episode, buy your right to vote just like America.
Yup. But that is open on the Patreon page, so go do that. But I think that'll do it for this episode. Allison, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a good time.
Yay. Zach, thank you as always.
Of course.
For everyone here at The Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I am Zach Powers.
Have a good time.